We are making our own story as we go, as we go, as we go. Hoping, we are hoping that we'll go so happy ever after, happy ever after.
Hi, I'm Kathy Piech-Lukas. Welcome to your Dream Day podcast. And today we are going to talk about officiating for a wedding. I'm so excited to have you here. Tell our guests a little bit about you.
Great to be here. My name is Christopher Shelley. I'm a wedding officiant, have been for 12 years, mostly in New York and New Jersey. But I've been officiating in Ohio and Northern Kentucky for the past 8 years, so I'm familiar with lots of venues and vendors in this market as well.
Wow, so you've seen a whole gamut of different geographies.
Yes, and let me tell you, the audiences, I think of them as audiences, the guests at weddings in New York versus the guests at weddings in Ohio, very different vibe, very different feeling. They are nuts in New York. They're out of their minds. People are vocal. People speak when you don't think they're going to. They cheer for things. I have ceremonies there where people cheer for every single person who's walking down the aisle getting into the ceremony space. And here I've done some where it is like a library, the entire thing, and it makes me feel very weird, like a bull in a china shop. But yeah, so it's very interesting.
Wow. So how did you get into the officiating industry?
I went to a lot of weddings where I didn't like the ceremony at all. And I was sitting there wanting to jump up and do it. But I thought I had to be a priest or something, and that was not going to happen. So, but eventually I was looking for something else to do. In my past life at the time, I've had a couple past lives. I worked at Goldman Sachs on Wall Street for a while, so that's a whole different world. And my wife and I ran our own massage therapy company for a while. But we were getting tired of that. Intellectually, we plateaued, and we were just kind of doing the job and not loving it anymore. So I was looking for something to do. I used to be a performer. I've always been a writer. And I went to a wedding for a friend of mine, and the person doing the wedding was not a priest or a rabbi. They were just an officiant. There was the stamp of approval officiant. So I researched and found out what that means and what that can be. And the ceremony was personal and wonderful and fun. And I thought that is what I'm going to do.
So what goes into becoming an officiant? It's not just, I think there's a misconception out there that I'm going to have my family friend do it, and they're going to get ordained online for $50, and then they're going to send in a piece of paper to the state, and boom, I'm an officiant. I'm ready to do a wedding. And there's so much more.
There's so much more
goes
to it.
Into it.
There is more that goes into it, and each state is different.
Yeah.
So no matter where you are in the country, you need to research that state's requirements for someone to not just officiate. Anyone can lead a ceremony, but for someone to lead the ceremony and also sign your marriage license, they have to go through a process which is different in every state. Ohio, you have to specifically prove you're ordained with a recognized institution.
Right.
And you have to send the state of Ohio a little bit of money and fill out their forms and get approved to officiate in Ohio, for example. Massachusetts is also very difficult, not very difficult, but they take some steps. I've done weddings in Massachusetts, up in Cape Cod, and you go through this thing where you get a one-day temporary reprieve for a non-resident clergy kind of thing.
Oh my goodness, wow.
So you fill out this thing, but then they send you back this lovely official-looking document saying you're approved to do this, and it becomes a keepsake for the couple.
Okay.
And New York is very stringent. Not only do you need to be ordained by a recognized institution, you then have to jump through some other hoops. You have to prove that you have a clergy, that you are a clergy leader, that you have a group that meets regularly. So you write this letter saying you have this clergy, and then you have one of your members write a letter affirming he's the leader of this clergy. And you do that.
Oh my goodness.
And you give them some money, and you go in person to talk to them. And then you sign but it's really kind of wonderful. You sign your name in this gigantic ledger at the city clerk's office in downtown Manhattan. You write your name, you sign it with a pen, and you are in that book for life. And you can officiate for life once you go through that.
It's almost like you signed the Declaration of Independence.
It sounds like that, but
officiants.
It's much more important. But these people who think, they can just go to ULC, give them the credit card information and then they can do it are very mistaken, unfortunately.
Well, and that's just the legal side of it.
That's
there's
just
also
the legal side.
there's also the actual ceremony part of it, which there's a lot that goes into writing a ceremony.
There is people don't realize the common thing you hear is people say, we only need you for 15 minutes.
Oh yes, I do. Bless you. You're married now.
They think you're gonna somehow materialize in a time machine, be present for 15 minutes, and then you're gonna materialize and disappear. Yeah. They think it's only 15 minutes, it couldn't be further from the truth.
Right.
I do as much work before the wedding ceremony as the photographers will do with them, like before and after, with editing and stuff like that. We have the same amount of hours. It's just hours are invisible. We spend hours interviewing them and talking to them, and I have an extensive questionnaire I have them fill out, in addition to me meeting with them privately.
Right.
And the questionnaire is very thorough. I've been tweaking it for years to get the best information. Yeah. And I should back up and explain that the reason I do this is I do weddings differently than a lot of officiants do. They're kind of different tiers of officiants. Mm-hmm. I'm also a trained celebrant. So I went to the Celebrant Foundation Institute, trained with them for a year, and so I'm very accustomed to doing weddings for couples that have multiple religious backgrounds in the family or multiple cultural things in their family, and they need to balance them all without offending anyone and without focusing on those. And our whole goal is to focus on the couple. So the questionnaire is designed for me to get a lot of personal information from them. Right. I tell people early on, I do weddings that are so personal that your guests will assume I'm a friend of yours already, or I'm a coworker of yours. I know you somehow. They'll assume I already know you, when in fact I'm just a wedding vendor who asks a lot of questions. And I'm a friend who knows what he's doing. That's like my
But you're getting to know your couple. You're getting to know your client.
By the time the wedding rolls around, I really am a friend of theirs. Yeah. I know them as well as their families do, pretty much.
Yeah, it's interesting because like with wedding planning, I'm the same way where, I tell them, I'm like, we will develop a big sister type of relationship because I've had more couples tell me you were like the big sister that stepped in who could translate to my parents, but understood what I was trying to say. And then, vice versa. The parents are like, can you get through to my child? They're not listening. And, it is very important to develop that relationship. And I think that's the one thing that makes weddings and just other corporate events and fundraisers different is that you've got that emotional piece to this puzzle. Yeah. And it's a critical piece when you're planning a wedding. Yeah.
I had a mother of the groom thank me after a ceremony. I know so much more about their relationship now. My son is not a talker. He didn't tell me much about this girl and what was happening. I knew he was in love, but I didn't know all the details. Now I do. Thank you.
Aww.
But to get to that point, it takes a lot of work.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, this questionnaire I give them, I ask them all about the basics of the relationship, of course. Where did you meet? How did you meet? When did you meet? But then I get into more details. Do you remember the first thing you talked about? Do you remember what music was playing, what you were wearing? Like, paint a picture for me. Yeah. What were the early days like? How did that blossom into something more serious? How did you realize you were in love? Like, did it hit you right away? Was it gradual? Ask them, what obstacles did you overcome to stay together once you realized you wanted to be together? A lot of people work in different cities, or they get opportunities when they leave school. And long distance can be the United States and Europe. Long distance can be Indiana, Kentucky. Yeah. It's different for everyone. So I want to know what they went through that made them realize we don't like being apart. Mm-hmm. We want to be together forever. And so let's make that choice consciously. And I like asking about the proposal, which is always fun because it's usually something that was planned that went wrong. But she still said yes. And I build it up as this thing like, we're going to find out if she said yes. Of course, here we are at the wedding. Of course, she said yes, but it's like fun to build up the drama. And so we kind of play through it. This one I had last Saturday, a wedding at Alcove by Madtree downtown. Mm-hmm. The groom, I went through the whole explanation of his proposal, and technically he never did ask her. So we had him ask her during the ceremony. He just got the ring on, he sat down on his knee, and he asked her, and she said yes, and we continued the ceremony. Since we were there anyway.
Precious.
So there's fun details like that. But then the middle part, part two of the questionnaire, is all the details that have to be accounted for, which more than anyone thinks. I like to know who the other wedding vendors are, because these are my fellow professionals that I'm just curious to see what kind of vibe they're going for, because I know how people work. Mm-hmm. I want to know if I've worked with them before. or who is this new friend I could make, new contact. Questions about their wedding party. People don't realize the officiant plays a huge role in organizing the wedding party, often at rehearsals on the wedding day. So I need to know who these people are. And it tells me something about you, and it tells me something about the event. If you have 15 bridesmaids and 15 groomsmen, that tells me something. If you only have one and one, or you don't want anyone, that tells me something as well. So I need to know these things. I like to know, are there cultural issues in your family? Does anyone there will any of your guests not speak English as a first language? Do I need to welcome them in Tagalog or French or German or whatever it is? I will learn a phrase of welcome to make them feel at least like we're trying. We know they're there.
Yeah.
The religious questions, that's a big thing. I'm a non-denominational minister. It's a minister with air quotes.
Right.
So a non-denominational minister. I'm a trained life cycle celebrant, which means I have no religious affiliation with anyone. I am like Switzerland among all the religions, which is a good place to be.
Right.
Because when couples book an event space for a wedding and not a church, the people from the churches won't go to the event spaces because it's verboten. So you need someone like me. So I'm a solution for the non-religious people who might still want to acknowledge religions. So I need to know about these things so we can find some nice cultural things to add in to make people feel like they're heard and this is still respected. Right. When Catholics marry Jewish people, there's a lot of glass breaking at the end. There's the Mazel Tov moment. Everyone loves yelling Mazel Tov at the end.
Well, and a lot of them will also have it under the chuppah.
The chuppahs, yeah. They tend to be heavily skewed toward the Jewish side, because the Catholic side is, of course, very reserved, and quiet, and puritanical.
Well, and to have a Catholic ceremony, it has to be under a Catholic roof.
Yep.
So, you can't just have a Catholic ceremony in the Marriott. It has to be at a Catholic church. Or I'll do a lot of weddings where there's a little white chapel on the Air Force Base, and it's recognized by 27 different religions because it's on the Air Force Base.
Lovely.
So that is considered a Catholic roof. But you have to be very specific about some of these religions because they just won't let you.
You do. And this is something that people need to understand when they're planning their wedding, which is probably a whole other podcast episode. But so the questionnaire, so there's lots of things. I also ask personal questions about their families. I need to know.
Right.
Your parents, are they still alive? Are they still married? Are they still married to each other? Are they remarried? Will your stepdad be there? Stepmom be there? What are the tensions here? I need to know about them, not just for considerations for the ceremony, but I will physically be present among your people before the ceremony starts and probably after for a while. I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. I don't want to cause a problem or make anyone feel uncomfortable that day.
Well, that can also impact the processional.
The processionals get very confusing.
Yes, because especially if you have divorced parents who maybe aren't on the happiest of terms, you might have to adjust where they're actually sitting during the ceremony itself because they don't want to sit next to each other.
They don't want to sit next to each other. They're probably going to be adults and be able to not make it about them that day. But you never know. But this is something you need to find out ahead of time because it could get ugly and you don't want that.
Right.
But there are ways to stagger them in the processional and stagger where they sit and keep them kind of apart. Right. There are some moments that even the children want their divorced parents to share with them. They might want to have them both give them away, so to speak, to the groom at that last moment before they get into the space. But it's important, whatever that is, that's their decision and whatever they want to do. But the officiant has to help orchestrate that. And this is not just paint by numbers. This is a complex, subtle thing to do. So you need to be versed in these kind of things.
Well, and what happens is, as a planner, if the family has designated one of their own or a friend to be the officiant and they've never done it before, everything that you're talking about falls on me. Yeah. Because somebody has to do it and they just don't. What are some other things that, like, if somebody it's their rookie, they're a rookie and they're doing their first wedding ceremony, what are some other things that they need to understand are going to be expected of them?
This is a huge issue. And let's talk through the wedding day itself. Yeah. Let's say you've planned out this whole thing. You've written this nice ceremony for your friends, and it makes sense, and you know what the order is going to be with people entering. When you get to that wedding venue that day, you're entering into a situation where professional wedding vendors are at work. They're doing their job. Their reputation relies on how they do in every single job they do. You are now being a part of their job, so you need to respect the fact that they are trying to do something in a professional way. So you can't just wander in and hope everyone's going to take care of you.
Right.
You can't. It's a burden for the other vendors to now have to babysit you and walk you through things that a professional would know how to do. Even from the moment they arrive, when is that moment? If the wedding starts at 6 p.m., do you show up at 5:30? No. Do you show up at 5:45? No.
No, absolutely
Even do you
not.
show up at 5? Borderline, maybe.
I tell them the latest is an hour before the ceremony because you have to get them mic'd up. You have to make sure that they've got their vows and, are they using a book? Are they going to, use paper that's on the lectern? I mean, it's all the little things like that.
I show up 90 minutes early at least. Sometimes I'm so antsy, my wife just tells me, just go. Early is fine. Because early is fine.
Oh, yeah. Well, in wedding world, if you're less than 15 minutes early, you're late.
You're late. Yeah.
Right.
And the reality is also that, let's say it's a 6 p.m. wedding ceremony start time. That doesn't mean that you can rehearse and practice and do things up until 10 to 6. At 5:30, it's now full of guests.
Exactly.
It's now no longer a backstage kind of situation. It's showtime already. The guests are there.
Right.
So you really have until 5:30. So if it's 5:30, when are you arriving? That's why I'm like, let's get there an hour and a half.
And you're
2 hours
also
before.
getting the processional in place like 5 to 10 minutes before the ceremony actually
You know
starts.
what? Let's go through all the things an officiant has to do, right? They arrive. They say hello to Kathy, the planner. I'm here. I just want you to know I'm here. Where can I put my stuff? Great. Okay. Now I'm going to go check in with the DJ who's busy over here setting up. They're still in their t-shirt and shorts and they're getting their equipment out. And you say to the DJ, hey, I have to go over some cues with you. When you're ready, let me know. Again, he's setting up a lot of expensive equipment. He probably can't drop everything to talk to you, but eventually before the ceremony, you're going to have to talk to this person to go over the cues. And the way I do things, I am all the cues for them, like visual and verbal. And okay, so we'll go back to the DJ. The photographer's here. Okay, they're taking a break from taking shots of the couple and everyone. Photographers, the first thing photographers will say to me is, can you do us a favor? When they're going to kiss, can you maybe step to one side?
Yep.
And I understand why they're asking me that, because they've seen a lot of friends of the family who don't know they have to do that. Right. And I will tell them it's not my first rodeo. And I'll even tell them I tee it up nice and slow in the most obvious way possible. And I get all the way stage left before I even start saying that. So I'm gone. And I take the mic stand with me because I know you think they're ugly. So you have to but that reassurance, that tells them, okay, you know what you're doing. We don't have to coach you through that. Other things I do with photographers, I tell them, by the way, we have 2 readers. They're just going to come up to the mic I'm using. They're going to do a reading from them. It's very short. We have a singer who's going to come up, or like there's a a cappella group who's going to do a song. They're going to stand here and be out of the way. Whatever it is. I'll tell them, okay, we have no props, no rituals. There's no candles, no sand. So I want to cue them, let them know what's coming. And they also want to know how long it's going to be. They don't want to assume they have all the time in the world to get ready for that kiss photo at the end.
Right.
So when you tell them it's going to be about 20 minutes, then they know this is not going to be that long and to be ready. Right. So there's all these things to check in with the photographers. And they will ask you maybe, do you have anything, bugaboos you want to tell them? Like, how close can I get? That usually doesn't happen, but because they have lenses, but sometimes they would say, how close can I get? And I would tell them, please don't come up into the area. It's very distracting. You can get all the shots you need close up with them later and no one will know. That hardly ever happens. Video people, let's go over to the video people and talk to them. Because video people might have cameras set up where you didn't expect there to be a camera. Maybe you rehearsed the day before and it was just you and the couple in the wedding party and there were no DJs or photographers or video people anywhere. But now there's equipment all over the place. Let's see where they're setting up their tripod because they're broadcasting it live to the Philippines maybe. Where's that camera going to be? How do you work? Let's check in with them so they know it's coming up too. Right. So they know you're getting out of the way for the kiss photo. Who else do we need to talk to? And the same thing, DJ musicians, DJs, the first thing they'll say to me is, okay, all I need to know is the last thing you're saying. And I'll say, I'll tell you the last thing I'm saying, but we also need to talk about the first cues I have for you. because they always assume I'm a friend of the family, I'm a friender, I've never done this before, and I'm going to be in the way. So you tell them what all the cues are. They're all dressed up in their suit and tie now, they're ready to go, and you show them this actual script. I show them on the page. So I'm going to come out, make some housekeeping announcements, then I'm going to cue you in a very obvious manner.
What would be an example of some housekeeping announcements that you would make?
Before we begin, we have a huge request for all of you. Please do not take any photo or video during the ceremony. We have some of the best photographers and videographers in all of Ohio doing that for us. So please put your devices away and just be present with us. Thank you so much.
And you know what's
that moment
interesting?
gets personalized sometimes, though.
I saw a conversation, I think it was a thread on Facebook, and they were talking about, are you using an unplugged sign or are you not using an unplugged sign? And what was interesting was I think people found it more effective for the officiant to make the announcement than they did having a sign telling people to put away their phones.
They can miss the sign, they can forget about the sign. It's a very distracting event for guests. You're seeing people you haven't seen in 10 years.
Right.
You're reuniting, you're having chitter chatter, and you're talking. Maybe you did some pre-gaming before the wedding and you're a little tipsy. There's all kinds of reasons people are going to walk by a sign that says unplugged and not have it register.
Yeah.
But to have the officiant, and also the reason I do, this is something I tell officiants, the reason I come out and do the housekeeping announcements is that if I don't, some lifeless ball of no energy from the venue is going to come out and do that announcement in a way that is not at all the kind of vibe we're trying to set here.
Right.
Please turn your phones off. Don't take any pictures or whatever. We're going to start soon. Can you please take your seats? It's going to be a whole vibe we don't want.
Right.
So when I go out there, it gets them accustomed to me. Like, who's this guy doing the ceremony? I introduce myself. I tell them I'm officiating. And then I ask them this question. And sometimes we personalize it. We say the bride and groom, or the specific names of the bride and groom, want you to know that if they see any one of you with your phones out, they're going to take the phone and we're going to toss it in the Hudson River. That's why we chose the venue so close to the Hudson River. So we'll get personalized. So they hear like, oh, okay, my friend Vicky does not want me taking photos.
Yeah.
I will not take photos, Right. And there's another short segue on that people do these days, more and more, because it's kind of fun. Once the whole processional happens, everyone's in place, bride and groom's there, we're ready to go. I'll tell the guests, remember how I told you a minute ago not to take any photos? I've changed my mind. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to take as many photos as you want, and then you're going to put your cameras away. Ready? Go. And so for 30 seconds, I talk the wedding party through like crazy poses that the photographer probably never asked them to do. And then I say, okay, that's it. Okay, now I'm serious this time. Put them away and because people are so torn about that because they know everyone wants to take a shot. And so that's the solution at that point, because now the bride's able to have her wonderful reveal and everyone's able to have their entrance, and that's sacred. But now that they're up there, we're kind of making a tableau. Go ahead, take some pictures. We understand. But then please put them away. So it's a nice compromise. Mm-hmm. So I have to tell officiants, this is something you have to ask your couple. Do they want to do that? Do they not want to do that? They know better than anyone.
What are you finding? Are you finding more couples want the unplugged or they want the selfie?
I would say 98% want no photos, no videos. They want to have it posted on social media a certain way. Mm-hmm. And they also just don't want a sea of faces with phones in front of them. They don't want to see this. And just people, and also if people have their phone up, they might say, oh, I have a text message. Let me just read that for a second. And then in an instant, they are not there anymore.
Yep.
So they realize, and also they have me at my meeting with them telling them, you should really have me make this announcement, because otherwise it's too tempting. Mm-hmm. Now everyone is so addicted to their phones.
They just so are addicted.
So it's a real problem. And some groups of people are worse than others. So I just say, let's just do it for everyone.
Yeah. Well, and like one of the other things that I know as an officiant, you'd mentioned that sometimes people, to partake in some spirits before the ceremony.
They might, yes.
But when you have to legally marry the couple, they have to be sober.
They need to be sober. It's right in my contract.
Yeah.
I have the right to refuse to officiate. I have the right to refuse to process their license.
Yep.
If I don't think they're in their right minds to do this.
Right. It's a
I've
legal
never had
thing.
to turn anyone down, but it's a real thing to consider. Yeah. It's something you need to keep your eye on a real basic level.
Yeah.
The officiant needs to, you are the one deciding if you are going to open up this gate and allow them into the world of marriage. And if you really strongly believe this is not a good idea, maybe for reasons of safety, psychological safety, physical safety, you will know if there is something seriously, seriously wrong. And you are the last person who can stop them from making a huge mistake, which is a huge, huge burden. I hope I'm never in a position where I feel compelled to make that call. So far, 12 years in, I have not. I've turned down weddings because I suspected something was hinky, but I haven't gone through the wedding and then gotten to that point and stopped them. By then, I know them so well, I'm like, this is the real deal.
Yeah.
But it's a real thing.
And I think the fact that you ask them so many questions up front about their story, you can weed out some of those.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a real situation. I have a colleague who is a justice of the peace for his city. And he was having an issue with overseas brides-to-be being brought in. And because he was the justice of the peace, he's like, I legally have to marry these people, but he was even suspecting something's not right here.
Yeah.
And, the fact that you're able to go into all that research and you're able to tell if there's something funny going on.
It's a weird position because you're doing a job for them, but you're also, you have to have a conscience about it. It's also funny sometimes where I share my scripts, the wedding scripts, with my couples before the wedding day, because we edit it together, so they know everything I'm going to say about them.
And that's a lot of work. I don't think people, I mean, especially if this is your first rodeo, just saying, I do, bless you, you're married. There's so much more that goes into it. It takes hours to create these ceremonies.
Yeah, you need to ask your couples, everything you need to ask, besides who's involved. You need to know, do you want to do any unity rituals? Are there religions we need to honor? Are there cultures we need to honor? Do you want it funny? Do you want it like a blend of funny and sentimental? Do you want it all sentimental? Are there parts of your life we need to stay away from? Are there details I should not talk about? You can't, just because you know them doesn't mean you can say anything you want about them.
Right.
And
it's like a do not play list for the DJ.
It's a do not play list for a DJ. There's like a do not say list for the officiant. So this is why it's only fair. I know there are officiants out there who do not do this, who don't show their scripts. Yeah. Which I think it's just not how I work. Let's just put it that way. They'll say, do A, B, or C ceremony, and that's it. I'm everything. It's so personal. I'm telling this story that convinces people I know them already. It's a very personal, specific story. I try and make it really funny, which balances out the serious moments. If it's really funny, people will listen. Right. When you get serious later on, and then you can hear a pin drop, and it's a beautiful thing. And then you can have fun again. But you are up there sharing their personal, most intimate thoughts about another human being with their people. They need to know what you're going to say ahead of time. It's funny to me sometimes when I write out, sometimes for their vows, I'll ask them a bunch of questions. They say I do, because they don't want to write their personal vows. And sometimes they'll tell me what questions they want me to ask, which is a funny position. I'm like, no, I'm the person deciding to marry you or not. I want these questions answered. I will ask my questions and your questions, but I'm not taking out my questions. Yes. I need to be assured that signing your license is an okay thing to do. So it's a weird position to be in, but it's only fair. It's their wedding. It's not your wedding. Like, this is something that newbie officiants need to understand too. It's not about them.
Oh, new planners need to understand that too. It's like your wedding took place in many, many years ago. And it's interesting because like the name of my company is Your Dream Day. Yeah. And I had a bride who I met with last week who did end up booking us. And she's like, I read through your website and I love the fact that your company is called Your Dream Day. It's not about you. Like the company is not named after you. Yeah. And she's like, and I read through, she actually read through the entire About Us page on the website and how I talk about, this isn't my day. My day was, many years ago. This is about you. Yeah. And she said, that's why I reached out to you, was because of what you said.
That is an amazing lesson for all of you out there. Yeah. And if you ever listen to Alan Berg talk about this stuff, he will say you need to look at your language on your website, put you phrases in there. You, it's your thing. Your day will be like this. Your whatever. Yep. Not I do amazing stuff. Some of that, sure, but most of it's got to be you.
Right.
So very smart. Your dream day. I had my dream day 20 years ago. I'm good.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Well, wonderful. And you mentioned Alan. You actually are very, very well respected on the national circuit because you've spoken at Wedding MBA
I like
to
to think
ministers and
Yeah, I'm stepping into the speaking and educational circuit, which is a fun thing in the wedding world. And yeah, I'm fortunate enough to be speaking at Wedding MBA on the Officiant track this year. Last year I was there representing the Celebrant Foundation, so it wasn't really my thing. I was just, marketing them sort of.
Right.
This year it's me and talking to other pro officiants, which is very intimidating. I was in that room with them last year, and there's some great names in there.
Yeah.
And so just to be on that stage and on the website listed is such an honor.
It is. But like a place like Wedding MBA, that's where all us as wedding professionals go annually to learn the latest and greatest on trends and techniques and apps and running their businesses, marketing their businesses. And I mean, to be on that slate is it says a lot about your background and your education. So congratulations.
It does. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And it's really worth going to. I resisted for years or had conflicts.
Yeah.
And I finally went. It's in Las Vegas, by the way. It's in Las Vegas early in November every year, the same week.
Yep.
And it's 3 days, right? It's 3 days in this massive Las Vegas conference center. And you wouldn't believe the number of vendors and the number of seminars and lectures. And it's so useful.
It really is.
Big names too. Alan Berg is a huge name. But David Chitera was there last year. And you'd think he's a rock star. He comes out and the high-pitched squeals was incredible when he came out. But what a nice guy. What a nice guy. I didn't know much about him, honestly, to be fair. I should. I'm in the wedding industry, but really nice guy. But there's so many smart people. Bethel Nathan is often there.
Bobby Brinkman's actually she's my mentor. So
Yep.
I adore her. She's just a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
She actually has a podcast, the BFABO podcast, which is really, really great.
And the wonderful Clint Huft.
Yes.
Former co-host of the Wedding Ceremony podcast, on which I was a guest a few times.
Very cool.
Is the MC, not just for the Officiant track, but for the whole thing. He's that charming. So he goes out there and he introduces David Chitera. He introduces Terica and other people, and he's a class act. And you hear that, Clint? I'm calling you a class act.
Well, you are a class act as well. I mean, you've taught us so much today about, officiating and what goes into it and how it's not just you just show up. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into being an officiant for a ceremony. Yeah. How can people find you?
They can find me at illuminatingceremonies.com.
Okay.
And on Instagram at illuminatingceremonies. And that's probably the best way.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you learned a little bit about what goes into being an officiant for a ceremony and just how important it is to engage professionals for your wedding day. Be sure to visit yourdreamday.com and tune into our podcast, which is available both on YouTube and on wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much and happy planning.